evening, everyone. I am Samantha Mowat. I'm a clairvoyant psychic and a contactee, and today I want to talk to you about invisible friends. So, when I was a little girl, I had an invisible friend, and like so many contactees, this was because my clairvoyance and my psychic abilities were kind of blasted open. You see, how this works is for a lot of people that are starseeds, light workers, they can be indigos, they can be incarnate earth angels. Sorry for the fan, it's on, that way the gecko stays warm. What happens is when we come into the body, we actually have a lot of our psychic energy still around us. We don't necessarily shut it down for the first few years of life. And what I found with this is that when I was very small, between shortly after being born and going into like 5 through 7, somewhere in that age, I found that my psychic abilities allowed me to see a lot of things that other people couldn't. I remember looking at our cat that we have and hearing messages from her. I remember being able to communicate with my brother who was on the other side. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you look at these psychic abilities for these children, is it's so different than what people are initially expecting. A lot of people will tell children that, oh, that invisible friend, they're not real. You don't talk to them, honey. Don't be silly. You're being ridiculous. When to the child, they're looking at this person who's beside them, and they're as clear as day. They'd be looking at their invisible friend, which is actually just someone who's operating at a different range of frequency that your eyes can't necessarily perceive. And they're just as clear to this child as you are. Whereas in your point of awareness with the psychic abilities that you have open at this time, you may not be as clairvoyantly focused, and you may not have the gift of empathy, or not empathy, pardon me, thank you, mediumship, thanks gods. So you might not be able to see the deceased grandmother, or you might not be able to see the little boy who's nearby that's a deceased child, or you may not be able to see the soul family or the star family members. And that's because there's so many different aspects to clairvoyance and psychic abilities and what people are really understanding. And so what a lot of parents do is they actually make the mistake of telling their child that the beings that you're seeing, whether it's the monster in the closet or if the child's having like really bad dreams, coming forward and be like, oh, those aren't real, honey. Nothing happened. You're fine. You're safe. You're just dreaming. When in actuality, that child may be astral projecting or having an encounter of a physical nature or an astral encounter or even having an ET encounter. And here we are dismissing this to our children, and when in actuality they're having strong psychic experiences that we don't necessarily understand and relate to. You'll have to excuse the paint on my hands and the paint on my clothes. I was painting today, of course. But the reason why I'm bringing up this aspect is when I was thinking about it earlier, and I was talking to my guides about what they wanted me to talk about tonight, they wanted me to talk about invisible friends. And I asked why they thought that was so relevant. And they thought it was relevant because it's not only something that my children have, was seeing some of the beings from their soul family, which they could see more when they were smaller, and less so now that they're getting bigger, because their psychic abilities are, of course, starting to slow down as they start to normalize themselves and be more, I guess, similar to their friends. But theirs have been slowing down at a much slower rate than that of the standard child, because they're being raised in a more psychic environment where psychic abilities are embraced and accepted. So the reason that I think this is really relevant is when I look at my own childhood. So when I was finishing kindergarten and my family was living in Nova Scotia and we were moving across the country to move to British Columbia, I had an invisible friend. And there were quite a few occasions I remember seeing him, and I remember at points like my mom being like, oh, just kind of rolling her eyes at me, and you know, it's totally fine, I get it. Like, if I were a parent of the 90s or something and I didn't have the strong degree of awareness that children can be highly psychic little individuals and that they could be seeing the interdimensional beings that they work with, then I'd probably think it was just an invisible friend too. But anyways, I remember this one time when we were just getting ready to move. And I remember the moving truck pulling up into the area where our PMQs were, which are paramilitary quarters. And I remember looking at the big truck with its back open and like the ramp coming down, and these men having these dollies, and they were taking the dollies from the truck and going along a little concrete pathway, and then they were going up to the house, and a few moments later they'd come back with like a bunch of boxes loaded up, and you'd see them going back and forth. It was such a beautiful sunny day. I remember knowing that my mom was busy and told me to go outside and go play, and my dad said go outside and go play too because he was busy as well. And my sister was playing a game that I didn't want to play. So I took my umbrella and I went to go sit outside under the shade of the tree. And while I was doing this, I remember having my umbrella just over top my shoulder and I'm twirling it back and forth because I'm just a bored little kid. And I remember a few moments later, my invisible friend showed up. And when I'm looking at him, I thought it was really quite interesting because I noticed there were a lot of similarities between him and I. I was at that age where you kind of notice things, but you don't necessarily analyze why they look that way or why they're different or just, I guess, the who, why, how, when, stuff like that. You just kind of look at them and take note of it, but you don't really analyze it. And as I'm looking at him, I'm seeing his pale skin and his reddy colored hair, and I noticed that he has large dark eyes, but they weren't like how we have eyes, where we have whites and irises and pupils and stuff like that. I remember looking at his and seeing that they were actually quite black, very similar to like a hybrid child's. And as I'm looking, I'm like, huh, you kind of look a fair bit like me. And then I'm looking at him again going, and you feel similar to me, almost like you feel like you're part of my, like, similar vibration or soul family. It felt like he and I were very similar. And I remember that as he and I were talking, I was thinking back then going, I remember seeing this boy a fair bit, and it was always on and off. He'd come around for a while and he'd disappear for a while, and he'd come around for a while and disappear for a while, and that was just kind of what he did. But I didn't really think much of it back then. But as he was sitting across from me, and he and I were talking, and I remember we were laughing for a bit and playing and giggling and just being little, and he stops after a little bit, and he's sitting with me and he's talking to me, and he says he needs to talk to me about something really important. And when he did this, I remember kind of stopping and feeling him, and he felt kind of reluctant and a little bit sad. Like he didn't want to have to talk to me about what he was going to talk to me about. And so a few moments later, he says to me that he's going to be going away for a while, but it's okay, he would come back eventually. And I remember him talking to me and reminding me that I wasn't going to be alone. And that was something that really stood out to me. The fact that he was bringing to my attention that I wouldn't be going through this experience by myself. And so at the time, I didn't really understand the significance of what was happening or what it was he was saying, but essentially he was giving me the heads up that my psychic abilities would be starting to shut down, and that with a locational change that I'd be having with going from living where I was and being this very young and carefree, very, I guess, relaxed mental energy, to going to a new school, living in a completely new place, to having all of these big transitions around, and then going to a mentality where I want to kind of make new friends and fit in and stuff like that, that my psychic abilities would no longer be at the point which would enable me to see him. And so, because of that component being in place, that's something that I've really thought about with my own children when it comes to psychic abilities. And I did it even when we've moved from being in the Lower Mainland to being in Northern BC. I helped to ensure that my children stayed connected to their multidimensional family, to the beings that they work with, because I asked them, have you seen them in a while? Okay, when's the last time you saw them? And I asked them, okay, well, don't forget to thank your spirit guides, don't forget to thank your soul family, don't forget to thank your angels. Incorporate them, ask them for help if you feel like you want to do this thing and you don't quite know how you're going to do it. Making sure that I help them to stay incorporating with these beings and connecting to them, not only to make their life better, but to ensure that their psychic abilities are something that they keep working on, developing and growing. Because I feel like that's so important. And I feel as though it's something that we can all really benefit from. And this is being done with a conscious intention to hopefully allow my children to better maintain that connection with their psychic abilities as they age and grow. But I'm going to let you go, and I know you can't really see him, but I want to show you how freaking cute this gecko is. Oh my goodness. Krusty is the cutest thing. And I'm going to put a couple little clips in there because I just want you to see how sweet he is. Well, I hope you have a beautiful evening. I wish you peace, love, and light. Take care. Bye.